All right, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to a Finally Friday. It is the Earthmaster here on this side. July 12th, 2024. It's about 12:17 p.m. here, California time. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe. Let's pull this up, see what we have. 2.5 in the California region. Did have another earthquake up here into the Vancouver Island range here, just off the coast of this region. Early this morning, a 4.8 striking into the same area where we've seen that pretty large earthquake here yesterday. If you guys remember that 6.4, well, that's off the map now because of the 24-hour threshold here. But, still kind of keeping an eye on this area because it has been quite active in the last couple weeks. It'll have these little series of slow events where it's just quiet and then all of a sudden kick up out of the blue again. So just keeping an eye on that. But today so far, a 4.8 early this morning, about 1 o'clock or so. We did see a little bit of uptick here across Washington. I believe firmly because of all this elevated activity out here. This movement last night northwest of Mount St. Helens. Not a big earthquake, but a 3.5 coming in about 13 kilometers deep or so. That earthquake did show up quite nicely on the seismograph station there at Mount St. Helens. This is a recorded view. There's that 3.5. Notice a couple other smaller quakes in there as well compared to the 3.5. And, it's somewhat active in terms of microquake activity around the region, but doesn't look like we've seen anything larger overnight for now across that area. Further out and about, Southern California region, Northern California, excuse me. This area up here off the coast of Ferndale. This earthquake was from last night. Nothing new to report here so far. The rest of Northern California, as you can see, very spotty at best. Typical movement here across the hydrothermal plants there in the Clear Lake volcanic field. This is nothing new. Nothing of increasing movement. In fact, if you look at, let's bring up the satellite view here. We'll bring up the last 30 days for this area. A lot of earthquake activity, over 1,000 earthquakes in the last 30 days, and this is actually a average amount for this region to see on any given month. If you zoom in really close here, you can see all these hydrothermal plants and whatnot taking advantage of the obvious heated areas below. There's a number of them, probably a couple newer ones that have been built out here as well, and it's a whole process that involves the earthquakes in there as well. Bay Area, Northern California. See if I can get my mouse to work right. Might have to get a new one. It doesn't want to do what I want it to do. A couple twos and some ones here. It looks like we did see another 2.5 in the Livermore area. A little separate swarm going on in this region, which is off of the, it's hard to say, Williams Fault maybe? In between the Calaveras Fault and the Greenville Fault. A handful of smaller quakes across numerous faults up here. Nothing big for now, though. Continue to watch the west coast due to the elevated activity, though. Long Valley Supervolcano got a 2.5 coming in right now just outside the Caldera region, which sits roughly about here. And Southern California, extreme Southern California, fairly quiet, aside from a handful of smaller quakes out here. Very small microquake activity. 0 in the 2.5 map, and that may look like a lot of earthquakes here, but this is very typical along a major plate boundary. The last 30 days of activity in general shows well over 1,000 earthquakes here for the Southern California area. Nothing new, nothing big, no major swarms. We did see a little bit of movement here along the Brawley seismic zone and the Imperial Fault and a couple other inland faults here, but the San Andreas Fault there, the plate boundary itself, continues to build up some pressure, and I think it's well overdue, right? We've been hearing about the big one for how many decades now? So it's definitely getting up there. Any day, any minute, who knows? Yellowstone National Park up here in Wyoming, northwestern Wyoming, showing a little bit of earthquake activity, mainly last night and early this morning for 11 earthquakes. Very small, though. Look at that. Largest one appears to be a 1.5 in the mix here. Let me go check out the latest Yellowstone overview, see what we got. Let's see. Looks like it's going to be some of these. A couple of these little ones here. But also, it looks like there may be a little bit more in the mix if we go to this station, a little bit more smaller microquake activity. And that would be some of those little spikes there in the red. Very localized activity. These events look like they're more drawn out, indicating some distant earthquakes. There's another local earthquake in Yellowstone. Nothing big, no major activity. Just still, a little bit of microquake movement stirring up out there. Let's see, getting a little bit of activity across these oil fields here today. It does look like we're seeing a little adjustment across the pressure or the North American plate in terms of pressure gradients out here. Yesterday, it's pretty quiet. So a handful of smaller quakes out here today, kicking back up. New Madrid seismic zone. Yesterday, seen that 1.9. Nothing else going on out there for now. Look at the broader scale view of things. Let's see what we got overnight for as largest magnitudes. Well, this 5.8 was from yesterday down there in the central East Pacific rise. Since then, we did see a 5.7 coming in just a few hours later, following that divergent boundary activity. But if you think about it, it makes sense to see elevated movement here across the Peru-Chile Trench here, following any divergent boundary activity out there. It's just, that's the way the general plate movement goes. With the 5.8 here, let me show you guys real quick here. Yesterday, right, 5.8 along the Pacific and the Nazca plate. That adds further strain down in this section here, where we're seeing that elevated activity today. Notice the arrows pointing away from each other. From there, we get the general plate movement aimed right at the Peru-Chile Trench, where we're seeing the elevated activity today. So it makes sense. Keep an eye on this region, 5.6 and a 5.7 so far in this area today. And those are moderate earthquakes, right? This area can see a decent amount of large earthquake activity. Last 30 days of 4.5 and above. This general area here, seeing that 7.2. Late last month there in June on the 27th. Pretty decent sized earthquake. So it looks like still looks like it wants to move there a little bit away from that area. That's where we're seeing that 5.6 today. So keep an eye on this region. Of course, this is where the largest earthquake ever recorded took place quite a few years ago, and before I was born out here. Let's see what we got for Hawaii. Anything stirring up out here today? A little bit of movement here across the hill in a slump. Look at that. These are, let's see what we got for the, alright, I'm buying a new mouse. If anyone uses a wireless mouse and you got that little wheel in the middle, you can zoom in and out at ease. This one's a little choppy, so might have to get something new. They're actually fairly inexpensive. A couple of smaller quakes here, mainly deep underneath this area, so that's going to be associated with the plumbing system that fuels the Mauna Loa and the Kilauea volcano. A little bit of elevated activity there today. As far as up around the summit and the upper east rift zone, looks about the same as what we've seen over the last few days or so. Really nothing elevated, still staying fairly consistent with the depth of these earthquakes and the multitudes as well. Let's go over to, I already checked this out this morning. I want to make sure I got the most recent data. This is the deformation data at the Kilauea summit in the past 2 days. We're taking a little nosedive here, little dip. Nothing big. In fact, it barely shows up here on the past week chart. That's the inflation. So we're still up there, still quite elevated, and they kind of smoothed the line out here a little bit when they made that adjustment back on the 1st of July. Noticed before. Oh, see, I noticed though a little bit less of a rise in inflation once they made that adjustment compared to the previous long-term inflation. It just looks less sharp as the inflation chart goes. Looks more like a slow gradual. But, you know, what can we do? I'm not in charge of the instrument adjustments and whatnot. USGS is. And either way, it's undeniable. We're still going up and up and up. Pretty fairly obvious there. Far as a visual perspective, up there around the crater area, this is a live image. Well, taken a few minutes ago, it looks like there, Hawaii time. Beautiful. Beautiful blue clear sky out there across the Big Island. Really no major elevated gases seen across the lava lake area up at the summit. So we'll continue to keep an eye on this because that's about all we can do right now. Here's a view of the East Rift Zone taken today. 77 degrees up there. Beautiful. I would love to be at 77. It's already over 100 here in Northern California. Yeah. I'm starting to become a hermit crab, I think. Staying inside, and that's about it. I don't even want to go swimming outside. It's too hot. All right. So let's see what else we have here across the region. This earthquake here was from yesterday, a 5.1 up in the Russia area. Very common to see earthquake activity out here across the Aleutian Trench and the Kuril-Kamchatka. It's when it goes quiet for an extended period, like the Kuril-Kamchatka here, that is, I feel, well overdue for a mega quake. This area can easily produce some large damaging earthquakes depending on which segment out here ruptures. But for now, fairly quiet across this area of the Pacific Plate. Minor to average activity up here on the north side of the Pacific Plate here for now. Further south and about here, looks like a 5.6 Papua New Guinea area. I know I mentioned this last night. We need to watch this area. Roughly here, Papua New Guinea eastward along the plate boundary up to about Fiji here. You can follow this trail of quietness. If we go back to the last 7 days here, you can see nothing. Zip, zero, nada in here. And that's very rare to see this extended amount of time frame with no earthquakes. As you can see, you know, it almost always seen earthquakes here in the crunch zone, up around Japan. Kuril-Kamchatka is awfully quiet as well. And if you think about it, it's been super active here across the eastern areas of the Pacific Plate and adjacent plates over here. And eventually, these are going to have to fill in. Quite rare to see this go so long being this quiet. So that's a couple areas there to watch. What do we got? Another earthquake there in Hawaii. No major swarms. Let me check out the I want to check out the seismograph station there. I like to check the recorded view because the USGS only given us a sample of what is taking place there. Why did I go back to Mount St. Helens? I meant to go to Kilauea Volcano down here and see the recorded view. And I'll get to something here in a minute. I had a question from someone asking me about the buoys that went off the coast of Washington from yesterday's earthquake. I'll cover that here in just a second. As far as earthquake activity goes, here's the past 24 hours. It does look like we are getting some increasing movement. Here's the past 12. Notice all these little spiky, brittle type earthquakes. They're just super spiky. Either way, that's still some pressure building out here underneath this area. There's past 24 hours around the summit. Still looks like most of the extreme pressure going on is across the upper East Rift Zone right here in this area, but we'll continue to watch that. All right, buoy activity from yesterday's event. I'm sure it's still up there. It looks like they removed the ones that were in event mode, and now I can't remember exactly which ones that were in event mode. But let's see here. I don't think it was that one. So someone mentioned something about an 80-foot drop in the water column height out here, and there's yesterday's event. You can kind of see it right here on the graph recorded from yesterday, from that earthquake that struck out there off the coast of Vancouver Island ranges, that 6.4. Very minimal adjustment on this one. These are in meters, right? This is the typical average water column height out here. There was one buoy out there in the mix of all these buoys that went into event mode. Any little microscopic movement is going to trigger these things into event mode. But there was one that was showing like an 80-foot drop. Obviously, if there was an 80-foot water column height, whether it's a drop or vertical uplift, we would know about it, and it would show up across many buoy stations. So that tells me right there that that one that had a defect, that's basically what it is, was not accurate. Here's another one from yesterday. Notice just barely, that red right here indicating a little bit of water column height. So when you're looking at these buoys in preparation of maybe a tsunami, you not only want to check the ones that are in event mode, right? But look at each individual graph and look at the readings, because just because one shows an 80-foot drop or rise in water column height, that would be a huge wave coming in, right? So obviously common sense tells us that it's defunctioning. Why it did, who knows? But you got to look at all these other local ones that are in event mode and then go from there. And it's pretty, it's fairly easy to read these. Oh, there it is. There's that one. Look at that. So, yeah, if that really took place, that would be a huge wave. And these other buoys are so close to each other that all of them should show that, right? If there was that, indeed, that much of a water column drop, right? From about 2750 all the way up to 2775. That's a lot. These are meters, but that's a lot of feet, like 80 feet or so. Yeah. Whatever's going on with this station right here is obviously a malfunction, because there's no way that's going to be able to be accurate. Because we would see there'd be a tsunami by now, right? And there would have been if that was accurate, but it's not. So I just want to cover some stuff. People had a few questions about why this one showed it and the others didn't. There's been many times we've looked at these buoys, and we'll have one way out here in the Java Trench that showed a 300-foot drop. And that's the one that's still offline. Who knows how often they get out there to maintenance, perform maintenance on these, make sure everything's accurate. These things sit out in the ocean and the water for quite a while, and if nobody does regular maintenance on them, they become defunctionable, and you get some odd errors with some of these graphs. But that was just the one yesterday. All these other ones look like they were properly tuned. So, all right. Anyway, no tsunami, defunctional equipment, which happens, right? Hopefully they'll get out there and fix it. Far as the rest of the world goes, Iran 4.5, a couple other earthquakes out here from yesterday. 4.3 there in Greece late last night. Let's see what's going on here in Iceland. I haven't checked that in a couple days, so I do want to, because obviously it's going up and up and up. Earthquake activity, a little bit over here across the rift boundaries, but this region down here across the Reykjanes Peninsula, pretty quiet. Grindavik area, a handful of smaller quakes here, nothing big. Let's bring up the latest information, see what we got here from the Icelandic Met Office. Constant land rise under Svartsengi for the last few days. So this was put out a couple days ago. So obviously it's been inflating since then, and been inflating since the last eruption here. Let's check out some vertical displacement here with the Svartsengi area in general, far as inflation goes. There's our last eruption there, end of May. Lasted for a little while. Can't remember exactly how many days. 24 days, if I remember right. And so we lost a lot of volume of magma, obviously. And it started going up here during the eruption. And then we lost the outflow. As far as the eruption goes, it halted. And now we're starting to get a very decent trend upwards once again. This is the vertical displacement, not quite matching what we had seen to the previous inflation level, but getting up there. I don't think we're quite there yet. Got a little while to go. So we'll see how this chart goes in terms of if we're going to match our previous level, but it's not quite there. Space weather activity here on this Friday, fairly quiet. I'm really surprised 3738 out here hasn't popped off a decent flare. It's still complex, holding steady, but there's, they've just been producing some very low-grade C flares, so not a whole lot of activity from the sunspot. And we're left over here on the eastern side of the sun with a lot of disorganized activity. So right now the main area of threat is going to be this one. Currently still in the Earth-directed view, but not for much longer. Notice the X-flare has dropped a little bit to 10% from 15% yesterday. M-flare at 55, C-flare around 99% chance or so. And as far as auroras go, it looks like the detailed forecast shows a little bit of amplification here of the auroras as we head into the time period of July 13th, 21 to 0 Z time. Current Z time, or general time here, is going to be 1940, it looks like, here on the 12th. So roughly around this time tomorrow and into the late afternoon, we could get this, maybe overnight. That's going to be for tomorrow. And as you can see, it's not a huge deal whatsoever compared to what the activity back in May. That was quite impressive. That was a once-in-a-lifetime event, folks. If you didn't get out to see that, bummer. Hopefully we'll get another one, but those don't come around too often. Far as asteroid approaches go, close asteroids, well, let's see what we got. Anything close? Relatively speaking, no. 2 million, 3 million. These are some large asteroids, but they are a very safe distance away. Nothing of any concern whatsoever from the approaches here. Storm Prediction Center, as far as severe weather goes, current day 1 outlook, just a general thunderstorm event out here across certain areas of the country. No tornado threat, wind, and maybe a little bit of hail out there in the northern plains for today's outlook. Tomorrow, a little bit more severe weather risk out there in that same region. 2% chance for tornado activity in the Minnesota region, also a portion of North Dakota up here. Wind and some hail threats out there tomorrow for the weekend as well. So it's going to be on Saturday. All right, folks, I'm out of here. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening. I'm just going to hang out here, probably, I don't know, watch some YouTube videos and just try to stay cool because it's already 102 degrees outside, and we're forecasted for 114 today here outside of Chico. So it's going to be a hot one, and it doesn't go away. Literally, it in the extended forecast here for the next 10 days, it's just hot. Really no cool down whatsoever. This is showing 111. I don't have that hot yet, but this is what it's showing. It's supposed to top out here around 115 today outside of Chico, 116 there in the Glenn and Colusa County area. Up in Redding, 115. So yeah, it's just I'm done with it. You get to the point of where it's just too hot all the time. I could deal with the cold rather than the heat. There's not much you can do. ACs are struggling. The electric bill here in California is already off the hook on any given month. I can imagine what next month's Bill's going to look like out here. It's going to be chaotic. But it never goes away. It's just hot. This is by far the longest extended high elevated heat activity event we've seen that I can remember in quite a while. Not much of a delta breeze coming in here, mainly localized there to the extreme regions of the Bay Area where it's a comfy 62 degrees. But I really don't want to drive down there for some cool air, because then I'll have to deal with traffic and everything. So, coast is beautiful this time of year. Cold. Crazy difference, right? From 60 degrees to 116 degrees inland. All right, folks, I'm out of here. Have yourself a good day. Enjoy your Friday. We'll catch you guys back out here for the Friday night update.